Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to podcast episode 2. My name is Ludwig. I'm joined here with my friend, colleague, pianist extraordinaire, Justin Bartlett. And in these series, we talk about building communities, culture, brand, contemporary music. It's actually quite a lot to take on. But we're very privileged to speak with musicians and artists all over the world, learn about their projects and what they've learned about building a community with purpose and with vision. And today we are joined by none other than Mr. Matthews Tyson from Launceston, Tasmania, Australia. Give it up for Mr. Matthews. How's it going, Matthews?
Thank you very much, Ludwig, and thank you, Justin, as well. Great to
Yeah.
be here.
No, thank you so much for joining us. Now, just a short introduction for Matthews before I hand it over. This man over here is a violinist, he's an educator, he's a teacher, public speaker, but most interesting of all, he's associated with a wonderful school called the St. Cecilia Music School and also an examination board. Now, what not many people might not know is, first of all, it's fairly difficult and challenging to start up your own school. But the fact that this man and a team of wonderful people also developed an examination board is going to be the topic of our chat today. And so I'd like us to begin with just two questions there, Matthews. First of all, can you just share with us exactly what is St. Cecilia and why was it even formed in the first place?
Okay, well, that's a big question, of course, but a great one. I was a young student and I was actually in a position where I was sort of forced into teaching. Now, forced not in an aggressive or a nasty way, but in a way where people wanted to learn the violin. There was no one to teach them. I was learning from somebody. Someone came to me and said, "Can you pass on what you're learning from your teacher from Hobart," because I had to travel, "to me so I can follow the same line?" And I said, "Well, I suppose I can." So on I went, showing somebody, relaying information that had been given to me to somebody else. So I suppose that is really the absolute basics of what teaching is all about. Relaying some information to somebody the best possible way so that they can do, hopefully, what you can do. And you're doing something, hopefully, what someone else is telling you to do. And that's the basis of probably education all the way down the line. So that's how it started. I was 16 years old when I first started to teach. And I never looked back because people kept asking me to teach them. And so I fell into teaching. Now, I had two colleagues who were my age, and one a pianist, the other one a violist, and me, the violinist. And we got together and decided that it was much easier to work as a cooperative than it was to work independently, individually. If I was putting on a concert, I could have probably 7 or 8 or 10 people performing, and I'd hire a hall and I'd get parents to come along and other students to perform. But wouldn't it be much more sensible to get 2 other teachers in with you, share the costs, share the burden, share everything, and share the fun of it as well? And
Absolutely.
that was the beginnings of a cooperative, of a school of music. Then a name. What are we going to call ourselves? Now, I wanted to get away from calling us some sort of regional name. I wanted to get away from, the Southern Hemisphere School of Music or the North Pole Academy or whatever, because I thought surely there must be something better than just a geographical name. Where we were sitting at the time was in a little room with a whole lot of books on a shelf, and there was the Book of Saints. And I thought, I'll have a look at the Book of Saints to see if my name is in there, being Matthew, of course. And I thought I'll read all about Matthew. But the page opened up at Cecilia and the patron saint of music. And so we looked at each other and said, it's going to be St. Cecilia School of Music because she's the patron saint of music. We knew very little about St. Cecilia, of course. And, when we did find a bit about St. Cecilia, it was a bit gruesome in some points. So we decided that we'd keep that in the sealed section of the school because it was a bit sort of, you wouldn't like to do a reenactment of a death, for example.
Got to
But
strictly follow
anyway, this
protocol.
took off. The name took off simply because it was different. And we, as it turns out, 50 years later, and as we were progressing, it was the best thing that we ever did, because we could use the name St. Cecilia School of Music, St. Cecilia Examinations anywhere in the world. And that was, as it turned out, a great plus to us. We weren't identifying with a community as in a country or a state or a city. We were communicating as music should be, and developing something that was purely international, that was universal in every possible way. Now, it grew. It grew because we were mainly teaching strings. And this happened around about the time that Suzuki method really hit the world hard. And in Tasmania or in Australia, it was also the beginnings of one of the television programs, 60 Minutes, that appeared on the TV. And they had a big segment, prime time viewing on a Sunday night. And it was all about these thousands of children who were in a stadium in Tokyo, and some of them were tiny little 2 and 3 year olds all the way up, and they were all playing brilliantly, looking fantastic, and they were playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Now, as a result of that program on television, our telephones rang hot. This was back in the 1970s. People wanted to be part of that sort of image of music. It just so happened that I was living in another city at the time, but it was time for me to move back to my hometown, and there was clearly a real need for music teaching. It wasn't as if there wasn't any teaching, there was a lot of teaching, but there needed to be a new direction, a fresher approach to teaching music. Now, that was the beginnings of it all, and it sort of grew from there. How it grew, of course, is that the students that we were teaching became our teachers. And then their students who they were teaching, they became more teachers. So it was growing and growing and growing. And there was no shortage of students, even in a small town. Now, at the same time, there was a big emphasis all around the world, really, on people taking music examinations to get a certificate, get a qualification, to be seen to have a particular level in your playing. This was a very powerful force back in the 1970s, 80s, even the 90s. The first question you'd be asked if you were a music student is, what grade are you? And if you couldn't answer that question, then there was an implication that something was wrong with your development or your teaching. It was very difficult, of course, for us to put our 3 year old violinists or 4 year old violinists or even 5, even 6 year olds, very difficult for us to put those students into what was considered at the time the regular examination system. We felt it was not suitable for them. It could have been devastating because, first of all, those examining boards were not used to talking to children at 3 years old. They were intolerant of the slightest error. So that's when we decided we can do it. We can have our own exam board. And so that's what we did. We said, let's do a beginner grade exam and put all this wave of hundreds of students through their little examination, treating it very seriously, of course. I mean, there was no way we could treat it as a baby's exam or something that was a lesser quality, because the parents demanded something good. So they went through the system, and we had to set it up in order for it to work. And 6 months later, this wave of people did their exams. What are we going to do with them next? Well, we still couldn't put them into the traditional exam system. So we created another exam, another level, junior exam. So that wave of students ended up doing the junior exams. Guess what? There was a new wave coming through who were doing beginners. When I say wave, we're talking 400, 500, 600 children. And then eventually, of course, that junior exam became a preliminary exam. We were beginning to run out of names. What are we going to call these exams? Red, orange, yellow, indigo, purple, black, green, green A, green B, green C. What are we going to do? So it eventually got to the stage where they would complete these elementary examinations for St. Cecilia. Then we would put them into the traditional examining boards.
I see.
It wasn't too long after that that we made the decision, why are we handing over all of this to one of these other organisations? We can do it ourselves, and in fact, we can do it better. That all happened officially in 1974. We've never looked back. Now, to a certain extent, we've been fortunate because it was the right time that all this should happen. But nevertheless, we still had a bit of opposition, because you can imagine when you're dealing with large numbers, when we're getting a lot of publicity, a lot of power, that also brings with it, sadly, a certain amount of fear. It comes from other people who feel they may not be part of this success. It makes them feel as if they are not adequate. They could be even failing in what they're doing. They can't keep up. So unfortunately, what happened is, in some cases, some of these people then thought that they would fight us rather than join us. And this is one of the problems probably in any community situation, really, not just music, where fear can be a damaging and dangerous thing if it's let run wild. So we were very much alert to that, and we tried to involve people as much as we possibly could. We were able to locally in our own city, but it was very difficult penetrating other cities where we didn't quite have the same clout as we had in our own city. But what happened, of course, we
That
had
is
these
something.
sorry, Justin.
Yeah, that's something we were actually interested in asking you about because, first of all, it's really fascinating to know that you designed these syllabi in response to the needs of your own students because you working with such young students, you saw there was a need that wasn't being met. But we were also wondering about any resistance you might
Yeah,
have encountered. So on the one hand, there's resistance from established you know, uh, examination boards. But on the other, you're selling your syllabus and your examination process to families, to students. And we wondered how you set about that. How do you convince somebody that your process is the best when there are so many viable alternatives or other alternatives?
exactly. And that is very time consuming to do that, because what you're doing constantly is trying to prove your own credibility.
Mm,
Now, a traditional examining board, for example, has already proven that. So we were very careful not to uh, cross over into their territory, and certainly not to criticise their system. We could have easily set up the system which just imitated what everybody else was doing, but there was not sufficient reason for us to decide to do that without coming out 100% appearing to be in opposition. That would be possibly unworkable, and it could work for a while, but I think there would be a collapse somewhere along the line. So the best thing that we thought of doing was try to establish something different, maintain the same thread, the same purpose, but implement it in a more interesting and different way. Now, a perfect example. I say we, the three teachers, and by that stage it had grown to a number of teachers who were contributing their ideas. One of the things that we did, which was very controversial, all examination boards around the world, nearly all of them anyway, incorporate into their examinations ear tests, oral tests, sight reading. Now, we decided to take that out of the exam system. That pleased millions of people, as you can imagine, because I know a lot of people didn't like it. Especially they were saying, a 13-year-old boy doesn't want to start singing a piece of music and feels very embarrassed. And in actual fact, will possibly even say, I won't sing it, so I'm quite happy to lose the marks. Sight reading, I remember the Trinity College examiner saying to me years ago, He said to me, the sight reading tests, of course, you do realise that they are written so that they are totally unmusical. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, because it's purely reading. We don't want them to use any musical logic
Oh
in
no.
playing.
Yeah.
And I thought, aren't we doing music? Aren't we supposed to
Yeah.
be playing music? What do we have to throw away the logic, throw
Yeah.
away the fact that in D major, we may be playing C sharp. There's a probably an 80% chance the next note is going to be D,
Yeah.
or are we going to purposely write it so that the next note is G sharp,
Mhm,
just to tease somebody to see if they're alert to it?
mhm,
Now, these things kept cropping up in the design of our examinations. And we were saying, why would we do this? Surely we're trying to see the best in people. We're not trying to trick people so that we can take a mark off just so we can say, we've got you now.
mhm,
What's the purpose of doing any of that? So that's one of the examples of the many things that we did to change the course of music exams. I must say, the many of the other boards have beginning or have in some cases copied exactly what we've done for the same reasons. Now, the criticism that we had from music teachers at the time was, but ear tests are so important, sight reading is so important, why are you taking it away? This is our only way of getting our students to do these things. And I would say to them in my response, so you think that a 10-second ear test at the end of a 20-minute exam is going to reveal somebody's brilliance with their oral ability?
mhm,
Or is it just simply going to be a little quick game to test somebody's memory?
mhm,
That's what it is. Instead, we said we're not cutting it out because we think it's no good. We actually would prefer to double its value, make it so that it's a proper course of study,
mhm,
have a separate exam for sight reading and ear testing, and prepare it properly and cover every aspect really thoroughly and do it well. So we took it away from the practical examinations, but what we did is we replaced it with a musicianship examination that covers those areas 100 times more than what would be covered in one of the examinations. Now, we say to people, if you want to do that and go down that track, it's difficult, but it's a wonderful way of developing the ear and developing the ability to sight read. So once we explain that, people are quite happy and understand we're not chopping it out to make it easier or to avoid it. We're actually just increasing it, but moving it to another area. That is one of many things that we've done to change
Matthews,
the course of the traditional music examination, and it's worked.
it's
um, yeah.
you go ahead, Justin.
Another question. Another
So many questions, and
question.
now I'm hearing the
Was
story.
yeah, I know. When you have a strong vision like that, and you want to manage many different kinds of exams. So you have the theory component, you have the oral skills component, and then you have so many different instrumentalists, or like keyboard or violin or all that kind of stuff. And you're working with other instrumentalists, other teachers to design exams. Can you talk a little bit about that process of conveying your vision to the other teachers you're collaborating with and creating a cohesive
Yep.
exam
Thanks,
design?
Justin. Yep. In fact, that's interesting because it's actually not me having the full vision and needing to convey my vision to other people.
Mm,
I would consider myself to probably be more of a coordinator of lots of people's visions and
mhm,
lots of people's ideas. Now, one of the real successes of St. Cecilia is we introduced 25 years ago the concept of performing, taking an examination which is purely performance. The idea being that a student will get up, they will be dressed appropriately. We say appropriately, that does not necessarily mean suit and tie and tails. It depends what they're playing and the style of music. So the word appropriately we underline. They have to be able to present some information about their concert to the audience who's present. They have to show correct etiquette, which is nothing other than correct manners on the stage to demonstrate respect for the audience and respect for the instrument and respect for the music and themselves. All of these factors come in. We tell the teachers how this should be done. We say to teachers, you probably know this already. Many don't, so we've got to explain it to them. This came about, this whole concept, from a teacher in New South Wales who contacted me and said, we need to have an examination for our students prior to them sitting their school certificate of education exam. We would love to have a St. Cecilia exam that specialises 100% only on performance. And we'd like them to do that before they do their school exam. So when they do their school exam, they've got the benefit of knowing how they handled it previously with St. Cecilia. They've got a result, they've had some comments, they've had some criticism, they've been able to handle all of that well before they do their school exam. We said, yeah, sure, we should be able to do that. So we designed something, we trialled it. The teachers came back and said, this is exactly what we want, and you'll be pleased to know that all our students have done extremely well. They all said they didn't feel nervous or worried because they'd already felt that a month ago doing their previous exam. We then extended that. We thought, gee, this is not a bad concept. We don't have to rely on just students who are going on and doing their certificate of education. This is something that everybody really should be doing. The end product, surely, of being a musician is to demonstrate in one way or another, not necessarily in a big way, but in a small way, to demonstrate how well you can play. And not only that, but play so well that the audience who's listening to you is going to be happy and will want more. And will say, can you play something else? Can you play this? Can you play that? We thought that's probably a more relevant way of directing music lessons and music education, the end product being a lovely performance and then getting an assessment on that performance, getting a mark, getting a certificate. Now, that was 25 years ago. That's now taken over, I would say, all the exams that we do outside of Australia and New Zealand, 100% of our exams, and that covers Italy, Hong Kong, Malaysia. Sometimes we go to South Korea, sometimes we go to Italy. Hong Kong, I said, 100% of the exams we have in those countries are what we call the concert certificate exams, what I've just explained to you. They love that idea of learning with the end product to perform. Getting an assessment and a certificate is added value. In Australia, in certain states of Australia, it also gives students university entrance qualifications. So there's a real value there. Those states in Australia, won't name them all because they may not be relevant, but students, when they get to their year 11 and 12 final years of school, if they've done their St. Cecilia Music Concert Certificate or grade examinations, they can count those examinations on their school certificate, which then is calculated for university entrance. And many students get into the university courses because they've just got that extra 1 or 2 points allocated to them because they've done their St. Cecilia examination. Added value yet again.
Matthews, what I love about this is not only has it been going on for decades, because you can have many organizations that go for decades but don't leave a print. They don't do anything. Yet I'm fascinated to know, and so you call yourself a coordinator. Now let's say that you are a local teacher and you have a vision, you'd like to coordinate. Can you perhaps offer some steps for that local teacher as to how they can build their studio? Do they need to knock on people's doors? Are they making cold calls? Are there other organizations that they can collaborate with? Because there are so many moving parts, one having the vision, but then trying to coordinate. In your experience, are there some ideas or steps that one can take to help realize that vision?
Yeah, Ludwig, that's something that we address all the time because we actually do a fast track teaching course for people who have got up through the grades, and one of the units of this teaching course is that very question that you've asked. How do we market? How do we recruit students? How do we get them to come through the door? And one of the big things that we've always said is you've got to be careful not to be overly commercial. Imagine if you did have sufficient money to put huge advertisements on the television. You would attract a certain sort of student to come to you. Possibly the student who is wanting to play a Bach prelude and fugue and a Chopin romance is not going to respond to an advertisement on a commercial television station to come along and learn how to play something in 5 simple lessons at $19.99. So that sort of advertising, we say, is best avoided, and so expensive. Why would you? Word of mouth is really the only way, and getting good publicity, generally publicity that doesn't cost anything, but you've got to have a story. So a good music teacher will find an angle, and the angle is not necessarily the teacher. You can't ring up the newspaper or the radio or whatever and say, look, I'm a really good teacher and I want you to promote me because I think you should, because I'm nice and you should be nice back to me. They'd say, thank you very much, contact me, in another 100 years' time. What you've got to do, of course, is you do it more subtly. You say, look, I'm just ringing on the off chance that you might be interested. I've got an absolutely fantastic young student who has achieved so much in a short time. They're 10 years old and they've just completed their associate diploma. This student is brilliant and most unusual. I would suggest that you probably have a bit of a chat with them. You might be able to do a story. So in other words, I'm not telling them anything about me at all. I'm just making the introduction. But what will end up happening, of course, is that introduction will normally lead to some sort of publicity or a story. That story and publicity usually will include the teacher in one way or another. If you can sort of squeeze yourself in, to the photograph when it's being taken, that's an even better one. So St. Cecilia relied very much on the word of mouth, and students speaking to other students, parents speaking to other parents. Of course, the other way is put on a concert, put on a magnificent concert, make the concert worth going to. It can't be an informal concert. It has to be a concert that people really feel proud to get up and play and they're ready to play. And a concert where they don't just play one piece, they can play 2 or 3 pieces. That's very important. They can even combine that concert with a concert certificate exam, so the audience is watching them do their exam. So probably the best way, I would say, for somebody who is in the grassroots level, establishing themselves as a teacher, wanting to recruit students so that they can build their practice, is you've got it. The first 5 students are the hardest ones to get. Once you've got those, the next 5 aren't so bad. Once you get to 20 students, it doesn't take long to get to 40. Once you get to 40, you get to 80 before you know it, you're knocking people back because you can't fit them in. The first, you've got to be very patient, but you've got to have something that's worthy. You can't just say, look, I'm a good teacher and you should come to me because, and I can do this and I teach that and I do. You've got to get rid of the word I, and you've got to prove to whoever's listening to you, look what has been produced here, and then let them realise that they've been produced because of you. And then to establish it into a bigger group or organisation, you've got to have a team of people to work with you, but they've got to be like-minded people. You've got to get on well with them. You've got to know these people upside down, inside out and up front. You've got to know them, and they've got to share the same vision and the same philosophy. And the vision and the philosophy in many cases develops as you go along. I don't think I was ever in a position where I said, this is our vision, this is our philosophy, and now we're going to work towards it. I certainly wasn't that clever to be able to do that, I don't think. You must have more questions, or do you want me to keep talking?
No, no, that's really spot on. I think Justin, was there anything that you wanted to pick at from this end?
No, I think that was so much content, and that's it's good to know that word of mouth is really one of the most important things, and then speaking speaking through your students, and what they
Exactly.
can achieve. Yeah.
And and you've, as a teacher, you've got to develop the skills. You've got to communicate not only with your students but with the parents and everybody you're dealing with. You've got to communicate in a very honest, very fair, very sensible way.
Yeah,
Sometimes that involves telling students, that they're not as good as they ought to be, but you find ways of doing that. That honesty actually does build credibility. And then it's a matter of time to develop it. I must say also, one other thing that I found very important is I've always taught from an independent studio, another room. I don't teach from home. So it's not a domestic type teaching situation. It's
mm,
very, very much a professional situation. So people arrive at a building that is dedicated office space or music teaching space that's set up to look professional. In other words, I want to be seen to be, I mean, business, and to operate in a business-like way. Most people expect to receive an invoice on time and they want to know how much to pay and when to pay it and the rules associated. That can be very nicely and very neatly and very professionally relayed to parents and to students so they know where they stand. The professionalism of operating in a business-like way is usually mostly respected. It's operating the other way that creates doubt in people's minds, and it also creates surprise. Oh, I wasn't expecting to pay $500. I thought it was only going to be 320. But if that was explained up front, that everything is explained without any apology. This is what we charge. This is how it works. Then people are not surprised, and therefore there's no upsets or any worries. Operating in a business-like, professional way, which is always should be always very fair and very honest at all times, adds a huge amount of credibility for a teacher setting up right from the very beginning. Make highly respected when that happens. I was lucky because my family were all in business. So my father was in business, my mother was a journalist in business. My grandfather, one of them was a bank manager, main one in the town. The other grandfather was an insurance manager of the insurance company.
it's in the
And it
blood,
goes back
Matthews.
in time. So I think there must be a bit of genes there somewhere that probably help out. Because all the music teachers say to me, Matthews, you operate in such a business-like way. Who taught you? No one taught me. Just the osmosis, just sort of, it just seeped in, I think, from watching my family operate in a business-like way.
Well, Matthews, I tell you what, you've gone far and beyond. Thank you so much for the
Yeah, thank
stories.
you
And
so
I would
much.
we could continue going, but in the short span of time, you've taught us about transparency and honesty,
Great.
business mindset, building a team. There are so many different gems and nuggets that we can bring out for this. We'll probably have to listen to the interview again to get deeper into the message. But I think at the end of the day, what we're getting is that you just have to be brave and give it a go and
Yeah,
ask
exactly.
questions. And it's the
No
bravery,
fear.
it's no fear. And we really
No fear.
appreciate that message, not just from America or New Zealand, but also out of Launceston, Tasmania.
Yep.
So
My word.
on our behalf, thank you so much for your time. Really thank you for your time and wish you all the best of your travels. We know you're off to Perth next.
Thank you very much.
So
Thanks, Ludwig, and thanks, Justin. Thanks for giving me the opportunity because it is wonderful to be able to share information and experiences. And if it can be used to good intent and for positive reasons, then I feel extremely happy that we've done the interview and would love to do another one if you'd like me to at any other time in the future. Thanks very much, Ludwig. Thanks, Justin.
oh,
So
absolutely.
appreciative.
There'd be
Thank you so
more.
much.
And
That's such a
Okay.
for our listeners, tune in again very soon for episode 3. But do check out the work of Mr. Matthews Tyson. You can Google him; he's going to pop up, and there's a lot there to learn about Saint Cecilia. But until our next episode, take care, everybody.